With less than a year remaining, the road towards the 2021 general elections appears to be bumpy. The opposition is against the Electoral Commission of Zambia discarding the current voters' register, while President Edgar Lungu says even if he is restrained to talk about the Electoral Commission because of its autonomy, he and the ruling Patriotic Front are uncomfortable with some new methods in the voter registration. We have tonight a special panel discussion on the opposition political parties' concerns regarding the online pre-voter registration, the annulment of the current voters' register, the aspect of prisoners voting, COVID-19 and campaigns, plus the conduct of police. Now, to join me on this particular special discussion this evening remotely via Zoom is the United Party for National Development President, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, the President of the Green Party, Mr. Peter Sinkamba. Sean Tembo is President of the Patriots for Economic Progress, and later on, the National Democratic Congress President, Honorable Shimba Kambwili. Now, reminders that on 21st of September 2020, the ECZ started its online pre-registration for voters exercise, which ends on November 6th this year. This is to replace the current voters' roll. Now, the Commission wants to register 9 million voters in a space of 1 month. The current voter register has 6.6 million, voters, although only 3.3 million voted. Political players have described this as illegal and the current method of registering voters. Just now, I welcome, my guests joining me via, Zoom remotely, the UPND President, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, as well as from the Copperbelt, the Greens President, Honorable Peter Sinkamba, and Mr. Sean Tembo from the PEP. To you, leaders of the opposition, good evening and welcome to this special panel discussion.
Good evening, thank you.
Good evening, Costa, and good evening, viewers. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Costa, and a very good evening to the Zambian people out there.
We must say that we're getting you loud and clear both on video and audio, and hoping that the NDC leader should be joining us shortly. Let me quickly, begin with you, President Hakainde Hichilema. You have already started crying foul over the electoral process en route, to 2021. The biggest question is, why cry foul before the election even takes place in August 2021?
Costa, we thank you very much for having me on the program and having my colleagues, the two that are there, Mr. Sinkamba and also Sean Tembo, and I believe President Kambwili will come on the show. And I want to thank the colleagues for finding time, obviously you for providing us the platform. And we must call things by their right names, Costa. I think it's inappropriate to call it that we are crying. Nobody's crying. We are demanding our rights as citizens, that any electoral process, any elections must be seen and must be free and fair. And an election, Costa, is not an event. It's not a day's activity. An election is a process. And what we're experiencing here is a process which is flawed, and is evidently so, starting from the issuance of the national registration cards. You can see, you can hear the flaws that are there. Citizens are complaining over this document, which is a constitutional right, which confers any citizen the evidence that they're citizens of Zambia and allows them to participate fully as citizens of this country. Not just voting, but indeed other rights. Driver's license, education, jobs, loans. You need title deeds. You need the national registration card. Why is this a problem to give Zambians their identity card, which is constitutional? We must start from there. And this document is the one that leads to one exercising their rights to vote. So we can't call that crying foul, Costa. Then you have the voter registration process, which is clearly flawed. And I hope tonight we will discuss those issues and discuss them properly. I mean, I'm aware, first and foremost, Costa, that there's a court matter. I'm aware. And here we are not talking about the substance of the matters in court. We are talking about the issues that would affect the qualification of the 2021 elections as free and fair, and indeed credible. And all of us must be concerned about these issues. So it cannot be defined as crying foul. We're not crybabies. We are asking for the conferment of citizens' constitutional rights and a process that will not favor any player, any participant, must actually be respected. And if the institution that we mandate to look after the elections on our behalf is acting, is behaving in a manner that suggests some bias, we must talk about those issues. Citizens must talk about those issues without fear, without favor. And I have a number of issues that I want to raise, having buttressed already, Costa, that there are flaws in the whole electoral process, and we cannot stand by and wait until 2021. It means we will have basically been participants to the rigging of the elections. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this particular point, I'd like to, welcome Dr. Kambwili from the NDC. Dr. Kambwili, are you able to get us loud and clear? Good evening. Hello, Dr. Kambwili, are you able to get us? We have you on screen. Are you able to get us this evening? I think Dr. Kambwili is still having his connection set up. Let me quickly move to you, President Sinkamba of, the Green Party. A stakeholders meeting was scheduled to take place this afternoon at Mulungushi at 14 hours. The ECZ have since said this meeting is botched, owing to what President Hichilema has touched on, that for them this matter is sub judice. What do you make of this move by the Electoral Commission of Zambia and your concerns on the road to 2021 vis-a-vis tonight's discussion?
Well, first of all, as the Green Party, we were not even informed by the Electoral Commission about today's meeting. Last week, we did write to them to express our concerns concerning the advert which has been running in the newspapers and on TV, where they are stating that people that are already registered at the moment in the current register, if they don't register again between 28th October and the 28th November, then they shall not be eligible to vote in the election of 2021, and that the voters' cards will not be valid. So we did write to them last week, ask them where they got power from to nullify an existing register and also to nullify a voter's card. Because you see, Honorable Againde has indicated, these are constitutional matters. For you to have to be registered as a voter is not at the pleasure of the Commission. It is a right which is enshrined in the Constitution. In Article 46, the Constitution is very clear that voting is actually a right which must be enjoyed by a citizen who is 18 years and above. And anyone who is 18 and above and has an NRC must be registered as a voter. And if registered as a voter, the Constitution does not provide for this person to be deregistered. And if this person is deregistered, according to the Act, the Electoral Act of 2016, a person can only be deregistered if this person no longer is a citizen of the country, and also if this person is no longer in possession of an NRC. So we asked the Electoral Commission of Zambia to give us provisions of the law under which they made those announcements. They didn't come back to us. And today I was surprised to hear that I had even called for a meeting, which we were not even aware of. And it's things like this which indicate that we have a wrong group of commissioners and officers at that institution. You know, I've been involved in electoral processes for a long time, from 1990. And I think if we're talking about the worst case scenario of having a group of commissioners who appear to know nothing about what to do, this particular group is extremely ignorant of what it must do. And they don't seem to understand their rights and their powers, the limitation of their powers. And that's where we are. And like I indicated earlier, if we continue with this kind of group, which does not seem to understand what it's doing, and they don't know their limitations in terms of powers, this group is likely to cause acrimony in this country. We can have bloodshed in this country when we are not supposed to do that. We have already an existing register, which by the Electoral Process Act indicates that it must be a continuous register, which can only be updated and be amended if there is any person, for example, who is found to have changed citizenship from being a Zambian, he becomes a Malawian. Yes, then the Electoral Commission of Zambia, if they have evidence to that effect, they can amend. But now to come and say this whole register is valid and we're not going to use it in the next election, your voters' cards will not be valid without having any power to do so, we think there's a problem. And you see, the numbers we're talking about are not small numbers. We're talking about almost 6 million people existing in a register right now, and another 3 million who are eligible to register. And they're telling us I can do it in 30 days, which is total nonsense. It can't happen. So really for us, we are getting worried that time is running and running very fast for us to before we can have the next election, which is in August next year. And the ECZ appears to be in the total disarray on what to do.
Thank you so much.
Of course, even this issue of sorry, you're saying something?
Yeah, I was saying I'll need to give chance to the other panelists to also come in because we've got more, to cover.
Okay, that's fine.
Dr. Kambwili, are you able to get us now?
Yes, I'm getting you loud and clear.
Thank you so much for joining the program. Before we get to Dr. Kambwili, President Sean Tembo, the PF Secretary General today held a press briefing saying you, the opposition, have hatched a plan. All this that you're complaining about tonight is a hatched plan to discredit the ECZ and obviously try to protest and cause acrimony when you lose the election come 2021.
Well, Costa, for us as patriots for economic progress and individually as Sean Tembo, we have been following these complaints that have been put on the table from time to time by the various opposition leaders and their political parties. And like any other national issue, of course, we try to pay attention to try and understand what the issues are with regard to the ECZ process. And it is just as well, Costa, that you started with President HH as well as President Sinkamba, who are opposed to the ongoing activities at ECZ in preparation for the 2021 general elections. Because my hope and wish was that these two gentlemen will be able to put on the table some concrete matters which they are basing their objections on with regard to the ongoing activities at ECZ. There is the issue of the new voters law, and people are objecting and citing the Electoral Process Act, saying that it does not provide for the deregistration of someone once they've registered. But the moment you come up with a new voters law, it follows that the old law cannot be used. You cannot have two voters law in one country. Now, the question perhaps is why are people objecting to the new voters law? The only issue that I've heard is that the new voters roll, people will be registered within a period of 30 days, 9 million people, and that ECZ is not going to have capacity to do that, and that a number of people might be left out. That's the only point that I've heard. And from our standpoint, I think that one is speculative, because you must understand that for you to register voters, it is not just a function of the time that you take to register voters.
So President Tembo,
the number.
President Tembo, just to chip in. So, are you in support of the ECZ? Do you think it's feasible for the ECZ to register 9 million voters in a space of 30 days? Are you in support of that?
Yes, it is. It is very possible, and even a week they can register in a week. It depends on the number of registration points that they are going to put on the ground. If they allocate, let's say, 3 registration teams per ward, that is more than adequate. I'll tell you something, Costa. In 2011, when I was registering as a voter, I registered in Chazangania, Kapanana there. And I went there and I spent less than 5 minutes to get my voter's card. So it all depends on a number of variables. It depends on the efficiency with which they are issuing the registration cards. It depends on the number of registration points that are there in a given ward. I can assure you that 30 days can be more than adequate. However, if the process is not as efficient, then obviously the 30 days would not be adequate. Even 2 months would not be adequate. But we cannot know whether the process with which ECZ will be registering voters will be efficient or not until and unless we get to that point. At this point, all the objections that my colleagues are raising, in my view, it is based on speculation. And, at the end of the day, the argument that you cannot register 9 million people in 30 days does not hold water, because when it comes to voting, those same 9 million people will be required to vote within a day. So if ECZ does not have capacity to register 9 million people in 30 days, then where is it going to get capacity to allow 9 million voters to be able to vote in one day? Those are the issues that you need to answer if you are objecting to the new voters law on the basis of the period allocated. The other point is the issue of the new voters law. You must understand, Costa, as well as my fellow presidents here, that it is not the first time that Zambia is voting. Zambia has been voting in a multi-party system since 1991. And we have not carried forward the voters' law that we had in 1991. The 1991 voters' law was only used in 1991 and 1996. And then in 2001, we had a new voters' law, which was used in 2001, 2006, and 2008. And then in 2011, we had a new voters' law again, which was used in 2011 itself, 2015, and 2016. So there has been a tradition of having a new voters' law almost every after 10 years. And I'll tell you something, the merits of changing the voters' law, the merits of having a new voters' law
but from 2011 to 2016 and now 2021 is what they're asking to say, where's the legal mandate? But because you've posed a question, President Tembo, President Kambwili, what is your reaction? He's saying if you are objecting, show fundamental basis. He wants you to react.
You shall know them by their deeds, says the Bible, and the Bible will never lie. You shall know them by their deeds. When you see them on social media at State House, dining and having pictures with President Edgar Lungu and group, what do you expect from them? The law is very clear. The law is very clear. There shall be continuous voter registration. In the past, the years is quoting 1991. The constitution did not specify that there shall be continuous voter registration. What is the meaning of continuous voter registration? It simply means the existing register, as at the time when the constitution was signed, shall remain in force, and what will be added on will only be addition for those who are turning 18 years old. That's the law. Now, why should people abrogate the law? by coming up with a new voters law. You cannot accept people abrogating their own provisions. As long as the law states that there shall be continuous voter registration, nobody, and I mean nobody, should be defranchised on the basis of them going to have new registration. People who are on the register from the time the Constitution was signed must continue being on the register, and then additional people must be added. And when Sean Tembo says we must wait until we get there, that's poor leadership. That's bad management. You can't wait until you have got a problem. That's when you want to solve a problem. If you can foresee a problem, the best you can do is to prevent it. Look, on the first day of the online registration, which requires no queues, no physical contact, no time allocated to any individual, they only registered 16,000 on the first day. And usually when you bring in a system, on the first day there is a rush. That's when you register too many people. If you ask Electoral Commission of Zambia today, they will tell you that they've not been registering the 16,000 that they registered on the first day. Now, where there are no queues, they registered 16,000. Taking it that every day they'll be registering 16,000, they can only register 160 in 10 days. In 30 days, they'll register 480. We have gone through voter registration before. Where have you ever seen that ECZ has taken 4 registration groups in a ward? Usually the registration is done per constituents, 2 or 3 centers per constituents, and the main center is at the civic center. So we know with experience that there's never been any registration where they've taken more than 3 per ward. And it can never even happen. When you look at the number of people that have been accredited as voter registration personnel in districts, they cannot send 3 streams in a ward. It's practically impossible. The ECZ says they want to capture 9 million. There is no way. And to tell people that I registered in 5 minutes, it's not true. We've all been registering. When I went to register as a voter myself, it took about 20 minutes. So when people have got an agenda and they want to achieve their agenda, they always find reasons to explain that agenda. What we are asking is within our rights as Zambians. What is so difficult in the Electoral Commission of Zambia giving 3 months? What they are saying that we don't have time. They knew from the last elections in 2016, they knew that the elections would be on the 12th of August. What were they doing to come and start the registration at the 11th hour so that they cry foul that we don't have enough time? Let them give the normal period. They've always given 3 months for registration, and let people go to the registration centers and leave the existing register without tampering with it. That's my position.
President HH, coming back to you, you've been following and smiling at the sentiments of President Sean Tembo. As you react, because he put a challenge to you to say those of you who are opposed must put concrete facts on the table, because he says your argument of 30 days does not hold water. But moving forward as well, President HH, as you react to that, I also want to ask you a question. The ECZ are saying, if you extend the voter registration period, as President Kambuli is suggesting, then Zambia risks getting into a constitutional crisis, because we've now enshrined the date of voting in the Constitution. It's August 12th. So if this goes on for so long a time, we may end up delaying the election, which lands us in a constitutional crisis. President HH.
Costa, first, good evening, President Kambwili. It's good to have you on the program. Thank you, my brother. Costa, let me address Sean Tembo's issues, right? First, Sean Tembo needs to understand that the ECZ does not and should not dictate what it wants to happen in the electoral process. The ECZ is a creation of the people of Zambia. And what we have seen in the ECZ is a draconian behavior, where they want to decide on what should happen in the electoral process, rather than doing as ECZ, as a creation of the people, what the people want the ECZ to do. What do people want the ECZ to do? They want ECZ to manage the elections and the electoral process in a free and fair manner and within the laws, not outside the law. Number two. So one, ECZ works for the people of Zambia. And that message must go and sink into the minds of those that are running the ECZ. Number two, they must act within the laws. Number three, they must remain impartial. They must not be biased. They must not appear to be favoring one or more of the competitors. When the ECZ starts having to address press briefings, joint press briefings with the PF, that is wrong. They need to, if they want a joint press briefing, they must do it with all the stakeholders, bona fide stakeholders in the electoral process. So let the ECZ listen to us Zambians that they work for the people of Zambia. And this behavior of acting as though people work for you when you are actually on the payroll of the citizens of Zambia must cease forthwith. I want Sean Tembo to hear that because he addressed me particularly. Secondly, I want Sean Tembo to understand that in the years he talked about, the history of new voter registrations cannot apply. The law does not work in retrospect. The electoral process 2016 was devised to deal with the ills of the past. The ills of the past included always starting a new voter register. We should not do that because it wastes scarce resources, number one. Number two, it creates this pressure point all the time. That is why there's a provision for a continuous voter registration. It was not there before in the years he's talking about. Sean Tembo, my brother, please understand that. Don't mislead the people of Zambia. Please. It is very important that we don't do that as leaders, if we claim to be leaders. This law, in the same way, Costa, there was a change in the law. We used to have presidential by-elections. And the people of Zambia decided that it was too expensive to have presidential by-elections. We were unfortunate. In 2008, we lost Mr. Mwanawasa. May so rest in peace. Presidential by-election. Very expensive, very destructive. We went into 2014. We lost Mr. Sata. May so rest in peace. Expensive. The people of Zambia then decided, Costa, that we cannot afford presidential by-elections again. And therefore changed the law, changed the constitution to provide for a running mate, so that when a president dies in office, we can have the running mate completing the term. Is Sean Tembo now telling us that we must go to presidential by-elections in future because we used to have presidential by-elections? That's not the way we should think. We should think in a modern way, right? So I think that settles that debate. The Electoral Act, as well as the Constitution, provides for continuous voter registration. So the attempt that the Electoral Commission is making is to disenfranchise a citizen who registered as a voter in accordance to the laws. And they want to do that without recourse to the individual. Draconian, they want to remove us who registered as voters between 2011 and now, yet we registered under the law. And willy-nilly, because they are acting on behalf of a competitor, they now must remove citizens, including those who live outside the country, Costa, who cannot afford to come here to register. Even if you register online now, you are still required to come to physically verify your new records. It means that a guy who lives in Liverpool in England has to travel to this country to verify their registration, travel back to Liverpool, and travel again on the election day in 2021 August.
President HH, for the sake of time, you've answered, Sean Tembo. What about my question on the constitutional crisis?
There is no constitutional crisis. This is a related question, Costa, Maichawandi. This is a related cost. This is what people who plot for whatever they stand for, and sometimes you don't even know what people stand for. The law is very clear. How can there be constitutional crisis if the law says there should be continuous voter registration and we must live within the law? How can we create a constitutional crisis? The opposite is what will create a constitutional crisis. When you want to operate outside the law, as what the ECZ and their friends are doing, is what will cause a constitutional crisis. Let me remind citizens, and indeed the Electoral Commission, if chaos arises in this country because you are mismanaging the electoral process, you will be held accountable. It is you and your friends. Today, you called an emergency meeting. All of us geared up to go to an election because a sidekick decision was made so that citizens don't air their views about the flaws in the electoral process, in the registration, including NRC issuance, which is a function that leads you to being a voter. You cancel the meeting because an instruction has come. This is rigging the elections. And I want to appeal to the people of Zambia, do not sit watching people rigging your elections. And therefore, that's where the constitutional crisis will come from. It will be on the heads of ECZ and those who are in government, who are the PF. Thank you.
President Sinkamba, back to you. You can respond equally if you have issues based on the previous points raised, by PEP. But moving forward for you, are you, as the Greens, opposed to issues of pre-online voter registration, the online one? Because we are told by the Commission that it's not final. And we are living in a digital space. We do money transactions via, mobile money and so on. Why should we be opposed to modernity and moving forward when other countries are using such, system, biometric voting and so on? President Sinkamba.
Well, first of all, to respond to my brother, President Sean Tembo, who is suggesting that we have not put on the table our suggestions, I think he may not have gotten us correctly. As the Green Party, we had one suggestion. Suggestion was that let the existing register continue running. If ECZ has issues, let them tell us what issues they have with the existing register. Now, if they don't have any issues, why should you get rid of it? Because you only get rid of a particular thing if you have issues with it. So what are the issues with the current register? They had indicated to us that, well, we have almost 400,000 people that have died in between 2016 and today. And we said, look, it's not your business to even clean up that kind of register, because that is now statistical. We have the Zambia Statistical Agency, which is an institution of government, whose job is to sort out the statistics. And the statistics now, as they stand, we have information is already at the Ministry of Health of people who have died. Their NRCs are already given. That information is also available with the police if they died from home, the BIDs. And also the councils, they have the NRCs for those that are buried. So if you're going to talk about wanting to clean up the register on the basis of people that have died, you don't need to make 10 million people line up so that you start knowing who has died or not. And their argument was foolish, where they're telling us that if you don't go and register between 28th of October and 28th November, we will assume that you are dead, so we'll remove you from the register. I think that's being foolish. You can't think like that. Our suggestion, we said, go to a statistical office, Zambia Statistical Office, tell them you have a problem, you want to clean up the register. You have this register where the names are there and the NRCs are there. How do you do it? They will show them a way to do it where within a day. They've got servers there which are very good processors. They should be able to sort out that information, have a clean register within a day, 2 days, without anyone going to queue up. That is one suggestion we made. Then the second suggestion we made to ECZ was that, look, focus only on those who have come of age from August 2011, 2016 when we had the election, and now, so that they are also included to be part and parcel of the register, because the register requires that it must be updated continuously. And of course, You didn't do it in between 2016 and now, but these 3 million people you say, is it 3 million people you want to register now? Please just focus on those and leave us alone so that we remain and do other things. Then we also said, look, you are advertising in newspapers, you're advertising on TV, you're advertising on social media. We have a lot of our brothers and sisters in the villages who do not have this kind of access to information. And if you're going to say those who are not going to be part of this program, then they're out of the register, you are leaving out a huge chunk of people who are out there and who are genuine citizens who deserve to vote. So, in a nutshell, there hasn't been any sensible argument by ECZ why everyone must re-register. And if they had advanced that kind of argument, which was going to make sense, probably would have bought into that kind of agenda. But now to tell us that the only problem is people who have died, we think there's a better way to do it besides what they're talking about. Now, on the voters register, I mean, the registration, you're saying the aspect of online voting. Yes, it's important for us to go in that kind of direction. But Costa, it's not only those of us in urban areas who have access to these smartphones who are eligible, who are supposed to vote. Voting is a right. If you go to Article 46 of the Republic of Zambia, the Constitution, it states clearly that the voting is a right if you are only 18 years and above. So, what of our brothers who do not have smartphones? Also suffer?
But pre-online voting is not final, like I said. The President HH
so
mentioned
why run?
You still need to go physically.
We come back to the same thing. Why run something which is not final, which will still make people go and queue up at the end of the day? It doesn't make sense. You understand? What we are saying is that online voting could have been, online registration for voters could have made sense if when you register, you don't need to go and queue up again. Because by going to queue up together with the people who are not part and parcel of the online voting, you're just bringing more congestion. So what was the objective of enlisting people online when at the end of the day they still go and join the others who didn't?
So you find it irrelevant? You find it doesn't make sense. President Sean Tembo, you have your answers now. Are you convinced that the ECZ road will bring anarchy, that the ECZ road is flawed? You've got 3 answers from the discussion.
You know, Costa, the challenge that we have in this country is that we have so many individuals who are confused, who don't think straight, who have dominated Zambia's opposition politics. Can
President Tembo, hello, President Tembo, can we regulate our language? I think the language should be respectable. Yes. Language should be respectable. I think I'll not allow you to throw insults to a panel. Well, we are discussing here and addressing one another. Yes. You as leaders are addressing each other. So let's be respectable in our language.
To any individual here. Okay. Costa, as I was saying, we have a lot of individuals among our opposition political platform who are not able to think straight and who are advocating for things which are disadvantageous to the rest of us in opposition. I'll give you an illustration of what President HH and the President Kambwili are advocating for with regard to the voters' roll. The biggest risk of any voters' roll is to have people who have died and are still on the voters' roll. And the only way to mitigate against that risk is to renew the voters' roll every so often. Because if you are not only adding, to a voters' roll and you are not removing, then you end up having a lot of people who have died who are still on the voters' roll. My brother Peter Sinkamba tried to explain that people who have died can still be removed from the voters' roll by using the death certificate and etc., etc. However, I think my brother Peter Sinkamba has lived in town for too long. He doesn't know that in villages, there are no death certificates. In villages, there are no records of who has died and who has been born. You understand? So where are you going to get the death certificates in the rural areas for you to update the voters register? And my view is that what my fellow opposition leaders are actually advocating for, to say, let us maintain the old voters roll, which has dead people, is actually shooting ourselves as opposition in the foot. And when you look at the reasons advanced why they don't want a new voters roll, it doesn't carry any water. They are talking about the period that has been put forward. They are talking about things that are speculative, not things that have actually happened. If it happens that the 30 days which ECZ has allocated is not enough, and on the last day there are still long queues of people who want to register, then we can always petition ECZ to extend the voter registration period. But until that period comes, anything that someone says to say this can happen or that can happen is mere speculation. And in my view, if you ask me, the picture I get is that my fellow two opposition leaders are basically trying to create a platform or a narrative to the Zambian people that the electoral process is rigged so that it can explain their potential loss next year. And if you ask me, that tactic is a very cheap tactic because it has the potential to actually destabilize the country. You cannot be planting seeds that the electoral process is rotten, the electoral process has been rigged, when you don't have evidence to that effect. Evidence you have to that effect is actually speculation that people might not be allowed to register in 30 days. That is speculation.
Before I allow them
to... not adequate evidence on the basis of which you can say the electoral process has been rigged.
Before I allow them to...
that your political fortunes have actually dwindled, and come next year, you are not likely to perform better, and you want to have some kind of explanation to give to your supporters why you have lost the election.
Before I allow them to respond to you, just make it clear for us. So are you saying that for you, President Sean Tembo, the easier way to clean up this voters register or voters roll from 2011 to 2016, which we used, by the way, you cannot say in 2016 there were no dead people, there were no deceased people on the voters roll. You cannot say in 2015 there were no deceased people. You cannot say in 2011 they were not there, but we continued using the same voters roll. So are you saying that in 2021 the only way to clean it up is to annul the current register and re-register everybody?
Of course, because when you talk about...
But how were we voting in 2016 and 2015?
When you talk about... Let me explain, Costa, let me explain. Allow me to explain. When you talk about the number of dead people, of course, that number increases with the passage of time. So in 2015, yes, there were some dead people on the register. In 2016, yes, there were some dead people on the register. But the number of dead people on the register has been cumulatively increasing.
Do you have that number? Do you have that number?
The number of dead people by 2021 will be higher than they were in 2016.
Do you have that number, President Tembo, of the number of dead people anticipated next year?
Of course, you know the challenge that we have in this country, Costa, is that our record keeping is very, very poor. Most of the statistics that you are going to get at Zambia Statistics Agency are statistics of urban areas. But Zambia is beyond urban areas. Zambia includes the rural areas. In rural areas, if someone dies, 2 days later, they don't have a fridge or a mortuary. They bury the following day. And there's no record of who has died and who has not died. So the trouble with most of these opposition leaders is that they've stayed too much in the urban area. They don't know what the reality is in the rural area. We cannot keep track of who has died or who is alive in the rural area unless we renew the voters roll. And I'll tell you something, Costa, you know, for me, I'm looking at this issue from a control perspective, from an audit perspective. And I've always been an auditor in my life for more than 15 years now. I'll look at the process and I'll tell you where the biggest risks in any given process is. And I can assure you that what those three gentlemen are advocating for, of us maintaining an old voters register, which has a lot of dead people, is something that is retrogressive to me. And that is why I'm very passionate about fighting the idea of keeping an old voters register. Because if the PF decides to manipulate the 2021 general election, the first point that they'll go to is to vote on behalf of dead people. But when you clean out dead people from the register, then you're going to ensure that they will have very little room to actually maneuver and try to manipulate the electoral process. But now we have, our so-called largest opposition leaders advocating for a register which has dead people. And in my view, such a register is going to disadvantage me. And that is why I'm very passionate about having a clean register.
You've made your point. You've made your point. Allow me to bring in Dr. Kambwili. Dr. Kambwili, I know you want to react again, to Sean Tembo, but moving forward, you did speak, to the press earlier this afternoon. Your call is that Justice, Esau Chulu, who is chairperson of the commission, resigns. Parliament today just officially ratified the other commissioner, in Commissioner Emily Sikazu, plus two others in Indioy Mutiti and the third commissioner. You're also calling, for the stepping down of the new, electoral officer in Patrick Shindano. Have they really failed? Is there no consensus rather than you calling for them to step aside before we even get into the ring of an election?
You don't need a rocket scientist to actually realize that this group of electoral commissioners are very arrogant and not fit to run the commission. Look, today they issued a statement that the new voters' roll was actually suggested by political parties. Where did they meet the political parties? Why have they called for a meeting? Why did they call for a meeting today to meet stakeholders who are political parties if they had already met them? They were claiming that they met the stakeholders who are political parties, and the political parties suggested that we need a new voters' roll. Now, what is important? Stakeholders telling you what to do against the law, or you following the law? We have made it very clear here that the law calls for continuous voter registration. How you remove the dead people is an issue of ECZ. They must find a way to remove the dead people. They are not going to remove even the people who are still living on the pretext of removing the dead ones. They must find a mechanism to remove the dead people. Like President HH said, we have got some people who are registered voters who live outside the borders of this country and work outside the borders of this country. Surely, are they going to find the money and the time to leave their jobs and just come to be registering every after 5 years? My wife lives in England. She votes in England. She was registered in 2001 in England. She has never gone back to the electoral body in England to re-register. Every time there are elections, she just goes to vote. We need to move to those levels in Zambia. To be saying we should be having registration every year, every time there's an election, is retrogressive. And by the way, when you talk about 2001 and before 2001 and 2011, the population of Zambia was much smaller. And the target that the Electoral Commission of Zambia wanted to register was much smaller. But they were giving 3 months in which to register. Now, you must be out of your mind to think that the program which was taking 3 months to register a few people can now take 1 month to register more people. And it is an insult to hear somebody who doesn't participate in elections to be saying these people's electability is dwindling. Because in this country, there are two types of politicians. There are some of us who want to be elected and also participate in the election of this country. And there are those who are just armchair critics and claim that they can win election without ever participating in election, not even a ward election or a constituency election. So it is painful for somebody who doesn't participate in elections, who is always the armchair critics telling you that you cannot be elected. When we have got representation in parliament, it doesn't even have a council. So when we are talking, let's have respect for one another. We are respected as political parties. We must live in harmony. We must have respect for one another. To say that they are being elected is dwindling it is an insult, to say the least. If you feel that you are more electable, just sell your manifesto to the people, but don't tell others. We are all organizing our political parties, and that is why we are saying these things must be done in a correct way so that the playing field is level.
But it's his opinion, Dr. Kambuli. It's his opinion. Would you blame him to say he's insulting you when he feels that your political fortunes are dwindling? It's his opinion.
I mean, it's being sarcastic. It's actually being sarcastic, to say the least. You know, it's being sarcastic. So I hope my brother will realize that it's not too good to say such things. So what we are discussing here is very important, and on behalf of the people of Zambia. The people have said there is no way. You know, this time people are suffering. People have got a lot of things to do, and time is money. We cannot be spending all the time to go to register, every 5 years to go to register. It is even expensive for the country. Those who are going to print the so-called new cards will have to be paid. Why do you want to spend so much money when the country, financial fortunes are dwindling? Why do you want to spend more money on printing more cards? Is it because you want to give your friends contracts to print new cards, that you want to make a new voters law against the law which says that there shall be continuous voter registration? Our argument is based on the law. Those who want to do away with the current register are doing it outside the law. And for once, respect those who want to follow the law. If you think you can do things with impunity and follow the law, then Zambia is not your place.
President HH, you've been following since the last time you spoke. I'll get your reactions, but as I move this discussion forward, you as the UPND, you as the opposition have also had concerns over the issuance of national registration cards. Something you touched on in your earlier explanation, to say as a citizen having a registration card makes them eligible to get a voter's card. So it's an integrated, it's a connected process. The Minister of Home Affairs in Parliament issued a ministerial statement saying that in between an election there's been continuous issuance of national registration cards. What is your concern regards this particular exercise?
Costa, first and foremost, I want to thank my panelists, my colleagues who are on this panel, President Sinkamba, President Kambwili, President Sean Tembo. I also want to say that it is clear that Sean Tembo wants to be offensive on this platform. But Costa, we are mature enough to recognize that this individual wants to be offensive. He wants to ridicule people. This is not a platform to do that. We are here to discuss a very serious matter, and it's not necessary for Sean to parrot, to discredit individuals. But I actually don't mind. I mean, he's just basically showing what type of character he is. And I have no issue with it, the way he's coming out. But it's up to him to examine himself, that we need to be serious about national matters. He cannot say that some politicians have overstayed. Where is the law that says remove this one? This is the behavior that we are seeing, that people want to hold a position that is illegal and want to argue about it and begin to ridicule colleagues. Citizens are listening to a very serious national issue. We are in a crisis. This country is in a crisis with regard to the electoral process. Costa, let me reinforce what President Kambwili said. A voter's card is supposed to be permanent, Costa. as the national registration card is supposed to be permanent, and it is permanent, unless it's defaced, unless it is somehow requiring change. That is the way the voter's card must be. Hence, the decision to change the law to take continuous voter registration by operational definition. It means once you are registered, you don't have to re-register. Only those that change a polling station should go to the registration process again. Only those that have come of age, 18, must register. Those of us who have registered according to the law and by recognition of the legal framers was to cut costs, to cut time. Time is money. We don't have resources to waste. We have to use resources to protect citizens against the COVID-19. Let me address the issue Sean said about dead people on the roster. Who tells him that after October or November, there will be no dead people on the voter register because they've just registered? People register 1 hour after registering, they die. So he has his answer in what I've just said. And that really underscores the difficulties we're having with some colleagues in this country, right? Because we have coronavirus now. It can take a lot of people. We cannot re-register because a few people have died. If people have died, there is a process, my colleagues, President Senkamba, and I endorse what you're saying. You go to the council. There's a certificate of dead people at the council. You then run the process and clean the voter database. The point is that the current database, voter database, must remain, and Zambians must refuse anyone parroting, being a surrogate of someone on this platform or elsewhere should not change the view that the voter register as it is illegal. It's not even an old voter register, Costa. It is the current voter register, and we should not tamper with it. Anything that tampers with it, it means we want to rig the elections in favor of someone. And if Sean is happy with that, please yourself, Mr. Tembo. But other citizens are not happy about it because it is their constitutional right to remain on the voter register because they followed the law when they registered as voters. And do not force them to come out because you have a willy-nilly reason why you want to do that. Keep it to yourself, Sean, and we will respect you for that. Let's come to another issue that has been raised. To be honest, if you want to keep on changing the electoral rules, the electoral process, you are creating instability. You are creating lack of confidence in the minds of the people. And the elections is a process, it's a product anchored on confidence, anchored on stability of the systems, anchored on the rule of law. You cannot keep on abrogating the rule of law and think that people will respect the results. The Electoral Commission must get this message. Do not do what you wish. Do what the Zambians want you to do. Do what the law obligates you to do. Full stop. No one is above the law. No one. No political party is above the law. And Costa, we must move away from tonight's debate knowing that no one must actually usurp the rights of the people of Zambia. They own the processes of this country.
Would you like to answer my question on NRCs?
Yes. Let me go to the NRCs. Here is another flaw, Costa, which every citizen who is really stable in their minds, consistent in their minds, and responsible enough, must know that there's a problem with the issuance of NRCs. Let me start with this description or summary. The registration office decided with the Home Affairs that they will have a two-phase mobile NRC issuance. Phase 1 covered 5 provinces: Luapula, Northern, Muchinga, Eastern, and Northwestern. The mobile issuance of voter registration was commenced on the assumption that the normal NRC registration was insufficient. It was inadequate. That's the reason that it was motivated, because there are many young people and including old ones, some who missed, some just didn't have the opportunity. So we must start from that base that there was recognition that the normal NRC issuance was inadequate. That's why the Home Affairs and National Registration commenced on that. Agreed. Let's park that argument. No need to really open that argument unless there's something wrong with us, right? So they decided on a two-phase approach. They did it in these 5 provinces. Now, they have gone to the second phase. Western Province, Southern Province, Central Province, Lusaka Province, Copperbelt Province. What are we seeing? We are seeing delays, Costa. Paper has run out. Power is not working. There are generators. It's a modern world. Power has run out.
There's no fuel.
There's no fuel. It is evident. You don't have to be clever. You don't have to have sufficient gray matter to know that this is a deliberate process to disenfranchise citizens. You don't have to be a supporter of a surrogate party to know that. You just have to be an ordinary, decent citizen. So there are deliberate flaws in the issuance of NRCs in the remainder of the provinces, on the assumption that these are provinces that may not vote for a particular party in the next year's elections. We cannot treat citizens in a dual manner, disadvantaging one group against another. It's unconstitutional, it is illegal, it is against human rights, universal human rights. So, Costa, therefore, you will see a situation where this attempt to wipe out the current voter register is an attempt to inbuild a favor for a particular party in a new register, so-called new register, an illegal register, to favor a political party. Our eyes are open. We can see what is going on. Everybody sees what is going on. Hey, look, Costa, someone here on this platform has argued that they can put many points. Let me give you an example. In a particular constituency right now, a particular constituency that shall remain nameless, because some people will insinuate other negative issues. The whole constituency, there are only 3 centers. Yet in that constituency, there are more than 60 polling stations. So someone on this platform said, it is an assumption. Hey, my friend, it's not an assumption. It is real. It is happening. Why not have registration, NRC registration, in the 60 polling stations? Why have it only in 3 centers? It's a flaw. It's a deliberate scam to cheat in the elections. We should not allow that in Zambia. ECZ, Home Affairs, PF, you will be responsible. And no one, Costa, must now engineer Kampyongo to start arresting us out of this program. I heard Sean Tembo says we are inciting. Sean, come on, grow up. We are inciting nobody.
President Sinkamba.
By the way, let me add something. Let me add something on that NRC issue. Look, the purpose of the mobile NRC during elections is to register those people that have lost NRCs and to register those who want now to register as voters. Now, you register voters you give NRCs in the 5 provinces. Before you finish the other 5 provinces, you've started what you are calling online voter registration. How are those people who have not been given NRCs in those remaining 5 provinces going to register, participate in the online voter registration? And sure, you need to be told that this is not correct. That's why we are saying this online online voter registration is only favoring people in those 5 provinces which were first given NRCs. You start the online registration before you register the other 5 provinces. Surely, people of Zambia, can we do the correct thing just for once, so that these elections we don't experience problems of accusing each other of rigging. Even this online registration, the ECZ should have called stakeholders and says, look, the system that we are using to register voters is such and such. The server is is housed at such and such a place. The security features of this system are such and such. You can't just as Electoral Commission of Zambia just start a program without explaining to the stakeholders how effective and how security tight that program is. And that is why we are complaining.
President Sinkamba, do you also share the same view that the flawness and the rigging has started with NRCs favoring so-called PF strongholds and disadvantaging the opposition strongholds? But I also want to bring in a very interesting scenario here, President Sinkamba. You've argued, according to your party stance, that it's impossible to register 9 million voters in a month. From the 5 provinces, and according to the statement made by Minister of Home Affairs Stephen Kampyongo, I may not have the correct figures, but I know that from the national registration card exercise, above 300,000 people managed to get, NRCs. So with that time given, does this not provide a litmus sample that probably these are the numbers we could be getting also for voters' cards? It would be around the 100,000s within the space given.
Well, maybe before I answer the 2 issues that you have raised, I think it's need for me to make a clarification to what our brother Sean Tembo indicated, where he says that in the villages, there is no record whatsoever on someone who is born, someone who is dead, and so on and so forth, which is an insult to our brothers and sisters in the villages. In fact, if there's any proper record keeping, our people in the villages have got a proper system of managing the deaths and the people that die. So to come and tell us that they are so ignorant, that they are so useless, they don't even keep any record, I think it's a very, very serious insult on our traditional leaders, because you see they've got a system of government which is very, very organized, from the headman to the sub-chief to the chief and to the local government. There's a very coordinated management system of information. And really to come and to be insulted like this here, that they are so useless, we just need to parade them for them to be registered, to know who has died and who is still alive. I think that's not correct. He needs to apologize on that. What we are saying, I think we need to be very, very clear. This is a constitutional issue. And we are speaking like this because we are defending the Constitution. If the Constitution says whoever is 18 years and above and has an NRC is eligible to vote and must vote, there's no way you can come up with a system which is going to eliminate them from voting, because then you are infringing their constitutional right to vote. And therefore, for some of us who have been advocates of human rights, we do not think that it makes sense to get rid of our brothers and sisters from the electoral process in this manner, and then we want to pretend that this is normal. That is not the case. So, Brother Sean Tembo, what you are saying that the vote for people to vote, it's a constitutional right, which is enshrined in the Constitution, and then and therefore everyone who was registered and is still alive should be allowed to vote using the old voters register, or in fact what we must calling as the current register, because whatever you are talking about now is just something that we want to come up with. Okay, a register only becomes a voters register when it is tabled to all stakeholders, you agree and you sign off the document. That's when it becomes a voters register. So we only have one current register, which is the register we used in 2016. And whatever you are using now is just some draft thing, which is useless. We haven't approved it yet, and it cannot be coded as register at all. So that's, I think, a clarification I wanted to make. Now, coming to the issue of rigging of these elections. Of course, I may not call it rigging myself, because I don't have evidence that there is this rigging. But definitely looking at the way the whole process of voters register and the NRC is being handled, we become very apprehensive that something funny is happening here. Because there's no way, for example, ECZ to tell us we're going to register 9 million in 30 days and we're not going to extend. That's their statement. We shall not extend. Now, Sean Tembo is telling us, no, we are going to advocate and ask them, we'll petition them to extend. When they've told you we will not do it, you understand? It must be foolish for you to come and say, okay, we are going to petition them, even if they've said we shall not extend. So for us, what we are saying is that please leave us on the register. Those of us who are registered, leave us there. Focus on those who are not registered and deal with them. Okay. And for the issues to do with cleaning up the register, please, that is a simple thing. Go to the Zambia Statistical Agency. They'll assist you on how to do it. You'll clean it up without any hassles, both for people in urban areas and the rural areas, because there's already some information management system. We should be able to inform the process of cleaning up. Now, coming to the issue of whether or not moving forward as parties, ECZ is doing the right thing. We do not think that ECZ is doing the right thing. We think this institution is up to no good. Definitely, we are not inciting anyone now to rise up. All we are just saying is that what ECZ is doing is wrong. And we think that this whole bunch of commissioners who are there should just be removed because they may cause the anarchy in the nation. Unless I've left something.
President Sean Tembo, Section 7 of the Electoral Process Act calls for continuous voter registration. Article 222 of the Constitution equally, cements that after the amended, Constitution of 2016. Do you, as political stakeholders and players, have to wait every 4 or 5 years for Zambians to demand that ECZ continues to register voters? What law or mandate is ECZ using to annul and disenfranchise Zambians in the decision you're supporting?
Thank you. Thank you for that question, Costa. However, Costa, if you allow me, before I answer this question, I want to address a perception that the three gentlemen have been creating, that I'm the one who has been on the offensive. I want to mention that from the beginning of the program, the two gentlemen, President HH and President Kamwiri, are the ones who went on the offensive first. For example, President Kamwiri started by saying that I was seen with the President Rungu at State House in a picture. And that picture was taken a long time ago. It was only circulated on online media. President Kamwiri's and President HH's online medias, Zambia Watchdog and Cosway, when we were raising the privatization issue to say President HH must be held accountable. Then they started disparaging me by circulating that odd photo of me and President Rungu saying that I was at State House and President Rungu is the one who told me to raise the privatization issue. So he started by attacking me. Then with President HH, he addressed everybody else. He addressed everybody else as President Kamwiri, as President Sikamba, and then he addressed me as Sean Tembo, as if I'm his houseboy. So the two gentlemen are the ones who went on the offensive at the beginning. So I just wanted to make it clear that I'm not the one who went on the offensive. I didn't go on the offensive. It is these gentlemen who have been on the offensive in this program. That said, I want to address your question, Costa, if you allow me. Now, when you look at the issues that have been raised, for example, on online voter registration, which is actually voter pre-registration, you realize that the arguments being raised by President HH and President Kamwiri are cyclic arguments. They keep rotating at the same point. Why am I saying this? Time and again, ECZ has explained to say this pre-registration exercise is not the final registration. Even you, Costa, on this same program, you've emphasized several times that this online voter pre-registration is just to allow ECZ to capture some of the details they need during the registration process, so that if someone goes to register, some of the details would have been captured already, so that the registration process for each potential voter can be reduced. And the ECZ has emphasized this. But both HH and Kamwiri will keep arguing that no, people without smartphones are disenfranchised, someone in the village, people who did not have an NRC. It's a cyclic argument that does not carry water. And even those two gentlemen in their heads, they know that this is a cyclic argument that does not carry water, but they are still trying to advance it, hoping that it will reach Zambians who will not be able to see through their shallow argument. Coming to the issue of Section 7, like you clearly indicated, Section 7 of the Electoral Process Act, which is Act number 5 of 2016, says that the Commission shall conduct continuous voter registration. That is what the section says. Now, those two gentlemen have been arguing that by establishing a new voters' law, ECZ would not be complying with Section 7. ECZ will be abrogating the law. There is no provision in the Electoral Process Act which says that you cannot establish a new voters' law. Nowhere. You understand? Nowhere. Section 7 just says you need to register voters on a continuous basis. That is all. And those two gentlemen, Kamwira and HH, when it comes to understanding the law, I think they can learn a lot from our position as a party and even myself. Because I've taken 3 cases to court ever since we started our party. I've taken 2 cases to the High Court and one case to the Constitutional Court. We sued the Zambia Police Service, and all the cases we've ever taken to court, we've won them. And those two gentlemen, maybe they can tell the Zambian people, if they believe that their reasoning and their thinking is accurate, they can tell the Zambian people when they last won a case in court. When did they last win a case in court? That is what they should answer. Because when you are interpreting the law, you need to be sober-minded. And both President HH and President Kamwiri are very far from being sober-minded. So they are incapable of properly interpreting the law.
President
and that
Tembo,
is their biggest handicap.
President Tembo, my question, which I feel has not been fully answered, is where can you cite where the ECZ is drawing mandate to annul the current voters register? I think this is the argument that the opposers are putting up. Is it legal for the ECZ to annul the current voters register? Which article of the Constitution or the Electoral Act, which section can we cite?
Okay, so Costa, when you look at ECZ, ECZ is a creature of statute. It is established by the Constitution of Zambia, you understand? And it is given the mandate to manage and administer the electoral process. That is the mandate of ECZ. And creating a new voters' law constitutes managing the electoral process. So for you to say that or rather establishing a new voters' law would be breaking the law, what you would need to show is a specific provision of either the Constitution or the Electoral Process Act, which prevents the Electoral Commission of Zambia from establishing a new voters' law when they feel that a given voters' law has actually stayed for a longer period of time. And there is no such provision. The only provision which the two gentlemen are relying on is Section 7 of the Electoral Process Act number 5 of 2016, which says that, and I quote, and I've got it open on my laptop here, it says the Commission shall conduct a continuous registration of voters. That is what Section 7 of the Act says. So how does this provision make it illegal for ECZ to come up with a new voters' law? How does it do that? That is why I keep emphasizing that these two gentlemen, in my view, they are not sincere. They know that their arguments lack substance. They know that their arguments are shallow. They know that their arguments are cyclic, and yet they keep on advancing the same shallow, the same unsubstantiated, and the same cyclic arguments.
Thank you so much.
That they will be able to penetrate some Zambians who might not fully understand the provisions of the law, and thereby cause confusion so that when they lose elections next year, which in my view, going by their recent performance, they are likely to lose. And they are basing their political standing on the past, on the fact that in 2016 they nearly won. But in politics, the past belongs to the past. I can assure the two gentlemen there that come 2021, for us as a party, we are going to put up a very decent performance because we've done our groundwork.
Thank you so much, President Sean Tembo. Thank you so much. We only have a few minutes to go as we close the program. President Kambwili, the Electoral Commission have made it very clear that there will be no extension to these 30 days because of the set election date in the Constitution. What's the way forward? Because the viewers watching tonight will be left a bit confused. As election stakeholders and political players, what are you proposing as a way forward? Dr. Kambwili.
We want to meet the Electoral Commission of Zambia and tell them, right in their faces, that what they are proposing is unworkable. There is no way they can register 9 million people in 1 month. And I can tell you, Costa, that by the end of this registration, if we go by the 30 days, there will be less than 1 million people captured on the register. And for us, we don't want confrontation. What we want is dialogue. We were ready today to meet them so that we can dialogue and come up with an acceptable electoral process that all of us as stakeholders would support. This idea of being arrogant and say we are not going to extend the registration, the way they were arrogant on the fees, we said on the fees that you don't need to make the fees exorbitant because you'll be excluding the poor people from participating in the elections. Coming to the sarcasm of my brother Sean Tembo, it's typical of losers. When you are defeated, you become sarcastic. So I will not go to be sarcastic and call him shallow and what, because, I mean, we'll leave it to the Zambian people to see whether our arguments are shallow. But it's his opinion and we'll respect it. But typical of people, when you are defeated, you become sarcastic.
President HH.
So I forgive him. He's a young man in politics. He's learning, so let him run the ropes.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kambwili. President HH, due to time, we haven't even touched on how this election will pan out vis-a-vis the COVID-19 and the safety regulations, the continued thorny issue of the Public Order Act, and so on. But again, you as a party are a player and a stakeholder in this process. What's the way forward then for tonight? What message do we leave for the Zambian people?
Costa, two categories takeaways from today's. Number one, the national registration card is an entitlement to all citizens who attain the age of 16 and above. So it shall be given to them across the 10 provinces of Zambia, all the corners of Zambia. Home Affairs, National Registration Office, it's your duty conferred on you by the citizens of Zambia. Not because you are the current Home Affairs Minister, you are the National Registration Officer, and you act to disenfranchise Zambians. You act to deny citizens their document, national identity document. You should confer that to citizens as a duty because you're on the payroll of the citizens of Zambia. So I expect the National Registration Office to give the 5 provinces equal time as was given to the other 5 provinces. And indeed, to stop this behavior, these misdemeanors, this habit of delaying the issuance of national registration cards to bona fide citizens of Zambia. If you don't do that, you are confirming to citizens that you have failed in your duty and you don't deserve to be in your offices. Period. Epela. enditamkwai, kwamana, imbubo. That is the way. That is the way it should be. Public office is to work for the people, is not to work for yourselves. Otherwise, you really, really shouldn't be in public office. So the time must be given to the other 5 provinces. The locations must be increased. The fuel must be provided for generators. The locations must be, if you like, Costa, when they're in one location, they must not leave thousands of citizens and move to another location and continue causing chaos. I also ask citizens, time has come for you to demand your rights. This is the time you should do it. No one is being incited. We are talking about within the law. And those that are occupying public offices, you must know that you must do your duties in accordance with the law. We are not asking for anything outside the law. Period. Next, takeaways on the national electoral process. Electoral Commission, you are indicting yourselves. You are acting in a biased manner. You are eroding the credibility of the electoral process. And everything hangs on the credibility of the electoral process for results to be taken as credible. And we don't have to remind you that you need to act in accordance with the instructions of the people of Zambia and the laws that exist at the time. Ignore people who are emotionally charged. Ignore people who tell you to do wrong things. Because when the time of reckoning comes, you'll be alone. You'll be on your own. You'll be answerable to the people on your own. Therefore, come to the table, talk to us. It is a lie to say we political parties agreed to the, if you like, doing away of the voter register. Continue with the current voter register. It is legal. It is you to improve on by adding new voters. You cannot allocate 30 days because you have no power to allocate 30 days to register voters. You just don't have the power. It is not in your right. Please understand that with due respect. So
Gentlemen,
the 30 days you are proposing are not acceptable to the people because they're illegal. They're unconstitutional. The issue also is that the 30 days is insufficient.
President HH, I'll need you to wind up on that. Unfortunately,
right.
Yeah.
I'll wind up, Costa.
Time is not with us.
Because you may not come back to me. Don't worry. I'm ignoring Sean Temple. Let him enjoy himself. So, what? Look, the 30 days are insufficient. The law doesn't talk about 30 days. Just do what is within the law. We are not asking you to do anything more or less. Do what is within the law. Costa, prisoner voting is an issue. We haven't discussed that because the Commissioner of Prisons, when he was accompanying some people in Monze, he said opposition parties will not be allowed to campaign in prisons. So how do we then, we in the opposition, convince prisoners to vote for us? Remember, I was at Mukoveko myself. I was on a death row. Remember, when you are in prison, it is easy to entice a prisoner to early release, to entice a prisoner to parole, to entice a prisoner to good treatment. There's no food. Those are death chambers. People were dying in the cells. You wake up in the morning, your neighbor in the cell has died. So such people are vulnerable. So if they are going to vote Costa, there must be a level playing field that all opposition parties or political parties can enter prisons and campaign freely. Is that feasible? I don't think so.
Thank you so much.
Very much.
Thank you so much, President H. Unfortunately, gentlemen, I know this is a democracy and we want to ensure that everybody is given a chance, but it's 22:40. It's 10 minutes exceeded on the time I was given. I'd like to thank you.
Just one thing, Costa. One thing, Costa.
I need to wrap up, Dr.
I have
Kabwili.
followed.
I need to wrap up, really.
Followed.
I need to wrap up. I don't have
Costa.
any more time. I don't have any more time. The news has to come. Unfortunately, we have to wrap up. Thank you.
I have followed people saying we are inciting people. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with asking people to rise and fight for what is right, as long as they are not being violent, they are not destroying property. To demonstrate is a right.
Thank you so
and
much.
If the ECZ is not going to do the right thing, people must demonstrate.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Gentlemen, President HH, President Kamwili, President Sinkamba, President Sean Tembo, thank you so much, all of you, for participating and giving your divergent views, opposing and proposing views, and for choosing Diamond TV as the platform to enlighten the Zambians. Thank you so much for showing us your democratic principles and freedoms, and for being part of this very important national discourse. On behalf of the entire production team, those have been my guests discussing the electoral process on the road to 2021. President Hakainde Hichilema of the UPND, President Shimba Kambuli of NDC, President Sean Tembo of the Patriots for Economic Progress, as well as President Peter Sinkamba of the Green Party. This has been a special edition of Costa on a Wednesday. Good night and pleasant viewing. God bless the motherland.
Disappearing everywhere, and reports reaching us indicate that there's a sudden shortage of fruits on the shelves, markets, and on the streets.
Mangoes, pineapples, bananas, guavas, and other fruits have left the shelves here. We don't know what's going on.
Tinasakira mafruits, tinasakira yanaenda mafruits kulibe. Kulichape kandoro. Manya nzakulisha che kandoro.
We refuse to give up on this problem. We are going to find the solution.
Dance till the sunrise, happiness and love aboard. Here we find paradise, from Cancer to Capricorn. Pick your flavor, fresh and healthy. Tropics is the juice you can savor.
All fruits yearn to become tropics. Introducing Tropics Fruit Juice Blend, a paradise of fruity freshness. Trade Kings, improving lives.
All bets on sports. One is fair. Virtuals and games. One is fair.